But the most amazing thing, because we're going back to the most ancient of ancient, right?
Yes.
So mine, because I've been studying Egyptian, but Ammon was the name of the father god.
Yeah.
And Enoch is a representation of Ammon on this earth.
On this earth.
So his teachings, which are temple teachings, the ancient, the hidden teachings, they were the mysteries, the forbidden.
Yes.
That you could not know. So when Egyptus goes to the land that is forbidden,
Yeah.
it is hidden of these type of teachings of the ascension. So the Ammon in our Book of Mormon is representing the same thing Enoch did of
Yes.
the hidden teachings that go back to the ancient mysteries.
And numerically, his name has a connection to Enoch.
And that is
Hanoch.
his actual name, right? It's not a title.
What?
Ammon.
That probably is his actual.
Okay.
The person in the real story's actual name was probably Ammon.
But you also have Hil Ammon. Ammon. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know what that
Yeah.
Hil part is.
Hey means behold.
Behold God.
Elam.
I was telling you.
Okay, means okay. Hey, like Helaman. Hey can behold. Elam can mean the young man, like Enoch was a young man. It can mean like he was but a lad. It can mean hey Alam, mean behold eternity, or behold that which was hidden, or behold God. So the names, depending on how you approach it, can give you different dimensions of the message that's sitting right in front of you. So another one, Rabbana, powerful or great king. Now hear the story of Ammon, different Ammon, same symbol for Enoch. Okay? And King Lamoni is an epic tale. Here the son of King Mosiah comes down among the Lamanites, specifically the people of King Lamoni. As the story goes, Ammon desires to dwell among the people of King Lamoni. The king Lamoni offers him one of the Lamanites' daughters to marry, wherein Ammon refuses, but requests to become King Lamoni's servant. Ammon is sent to watch over the king's flocks, at which point the king's flocks are scattered by the other Lamanites. Ammon cuts off their arms. King Lamoni hears about it and has him brought before him. At this point, the word Rabbana is connected to the word powerful or great king. Now, here it says, and one of the king's servants said to him, Rabbana, which is being interpreted, powerful or great king. So, interpreted, now we've got to find the phrases, powerful, great king. Now, Ravana, Rav, can be a master, powerful, high person. So we get rabbi, or Rav is a great one. Okay, but he's telling us he's connecting this teaching by the use of the word interpreted to these things, powerful or great king, and they do occur in the Torah. We find the word powerful, gibor, first used in the Torah in Genesis 6:4. Genesis 6:4. So Rabbana is connected to something in this scripture. There were giants, Nephilim, in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, that same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. The alternate translation could be rendered, there were Nephilim in those days, and also after. When the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same were mighty or powerful men, like unto the ancients, men of the name, meaning the name Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. So in other words, there's Nephilim it's only by tradition that Nephilim are translated as giants. You can only get that from the Septuagint. And it's possible they were physically much larger than us, but the idea of Nephilim is also connected to the idea of those who came down from above. Nephilim, okay, is the idea of the giant, which is the constellation Orion, specifically Orion's belt. Okay, so in those type of things, this type of situation, all of these connections are meant to be made. And which is interesting because later in the Book of Ether, you're going to find there's a creation epic hidden in the Book of Ether. And most people never realize what they're reading when they read the Book of Ether. A creation epic.
Epic.
Of a story of where these people came from, where they went to, when they finally came to this world.
Aliens.
I just leave it at that. I didn't say any more. Somewhere else.
Well, that's a generic word, I mean,
There's a,
travelers.
there's
Yeah.
an anthropologist that's following DNA, and he's just, I've been following him a little bit because he's showing that out of Africa, genome, it's absolute false, and what our kids have been taught us is absolutely false. And he's like, there has to be something, because this group appears that
Out of
has
nowhere.
no connection to this other group. It's a different DNA, and it's ancient, and it really follows more the mythology that they came from above.
Yeah. And here's what we see here in, again, we can also connect this account to the identity of the sons of God by drawing upon the Book of Moses. And in those days there were giants, Nephilim, upon the earth, and they sought Noah to take away his life, but the Lord was with Noah. And the power of the Lord was upon him, and the Lord ordained Noah after his own order, commanded him that she should go forth and declare the gospel unto the children of men, even as it was given unto Enoch. And it came to pass that Noah called upon the children of men that they should repent, but they hearkened not to his voice and to his words. And also after that they had heard him, they came up before him, saying, Behold, we are the sons of God. Have we not taken unto ourselves the daughters of men? And are we not eating and drinking and marrying and given in marriage? And our wives bear unto us children? The same are mighty men, which are like unto men of old, great men of really not great renown, men of the name. And they hearkened not unto the words of Noah. Now notice what he says here, the sons of God. Any covenant nation, like Israel, is referred to as the sons of God. By taking the daughters of men, they're taking non-covenantal women. That's what the parallel is for our time. So, for example, as an Israelite, if I were to marry outside the covenant, okay, that would be a son of God taking that which is forbidden among the daughters of men and mixing. That's kind of what that
But
refers
it
to.
has a good ending because they are men of the name.
Men of the name.
So it doesn't
you
look
know.
like it's a cursing to those children.
No, but what it does is it tells us that what they're claiming to Noah. Well, we're men of the name. We follow this.
Yes.
And he's like, and of course Noah's like, no, not really. You're doing everything else like everybody else has done. You're messing up. And I think in the Book of Mormon it also gives us a little more of that story, and we'll go into that here.
This is so awesome.
Okay, so in the ancient world, those mighty men of old were said to be beings of great power, even to perform mighty works and wonders. By using the word Rabbana in the text, the book of Alma is connecting the story of Ammon, a symbol for Enoch, and King Lamoni and the Lamanites. In other words, couched in the story of Ammon and the people of King Lamoni is a greater account of Enoch among the children of Seth, which is an older account. Specifically, those who descended from the mountain of God, intermingled with the children of Cain, and who could no longer ascend. Okay? And that comes from the second book of Adam and Eve. It's like toward the end. Like
Is this pre-flood? This is pre-flood.
This is pre-flood.
Yeah, okay.
While its literal interpretation is the story of Ammon and King Lamoni, its prophetic interpretation is revealing a much older account of Enoch and the redemption of the children of Seth. So like, for example, when we talk about Ammon going down to King Lamoni, Ammon, the principle of the story is Ammon is Enoch in a glorified state, a translated state, going down to us dark and loathsome people here who are unilluminated. We're the people of King Lamoni. When we partake of that message of the gospel through the Messiah that he delivered, we cease being dark and loathsome Lamanites, and we become what we call the anti-Nephi Lehis, or in Hebrew, the Panim Nephilehi, or the mirror image of Lehi and Nephi, or more accurately, Nephi Chaya, God breathed into Adam the living soul, Nephi Lachai, in the image of the living soul Adam before the fall. So these people, these Lamanites under King Lamoni, are a symbol for us dark and loathsome little creatures on this earth, ascending back to the land of Zarahemla, the children of life, and becoming illuminated, or like Adam was, prior to the fall. So, Anti-Nephi Lehis, Panim Nephilehi, the mirror image of Nephi and Lehi. So in a literal sense, they became like their fathers, Nephi and Lehi. In a symbolic sense or a prophetic sense, their goal was not just to become like Lehi and Nephi, was to become like Adam pre-fall, which is the Nefesh Chaya, the living soul. Deseret. And they'd also carry them Deseret, which by interpretation, there we go again, interpretation is a honeybee. And they did carry with them swarms of bees, and all manner of that which is upon the face of the land, seeds of every kind. So by interpretation, it's related to the word honeybee. Now the word in Hebrew for honeybee is Deborah, or Debarim. Okay, the word Deseret has been a great speculation among scholars. In Ether 2.3, Moroni gives us the key for unlocking the word by using an Israelite poetic play on words, using the word Deseret with the word Zara, Zayin, Resh, Ayin, with seed. Desar, Deseret, Zayin, Zara, all carry the same base. Okay? In doing so, we unlock the Hebrew letters for Deseret, Dalet, Zayin, Resh. Okay? And unless you think I'm lying, I'm going to do the math for you. Deseret, Dalet, Zayin, Resh. Dalet equals 4, Zayin equals 7, Resh equals 200. Total, 211. The word in Hebrew for honeybee is Deborah, like the prophetess Deborah. Dalet, Bet, Resh, Hey. The word has the same numeric value of 211. Or Deseret, which by interpretation is a honeybee. That's how I check my work. The Hebrew is also mathematical equations, so one equals the other by interpretation. But it also, go ahead.
Zayin, does it have a word meaning?
It's a letter of the alphabet.
I know, but does it have anything?
I believe Zion was yes, number 7. I believe its symbol was its original symbol. I think was like a sword or a threshing thing. Okay. So, like the Nephites, the Jaredites took with them the honeybees, swarms of bees, and seeds of every kind. Here the symbol of the honeybee is employed not just as a literal honeybee, but also a symbol that they also had the secret and ancient teachings of the fathers. So when you see honeybees in scriptures or hives, that's a symbol for that these people had the ancient teachings of the fathers. Not just Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but we're talking fathers like Adam, Seth, Noah, Enoch, those guys.
Could it possibly be the mothers because you have Deborah?
Well, it could be too. I mean, I'm just saying the fathers. That's just tradition by us,
I know,
you know.
I'm just thinking the other side of
The fathers and the mothers, the parents, the original parents. Yes,
Yeah.
I believe that. With this understanding, the symbol of the honeybee, the bee, the hive, like I said, not just that's a nice, people think it's just a nice symbol of industriousness, which I guess that could be one. It's the idea that it contains the ancient secret teachings that came from Adam. So Nephi carried honeybees with him. Jaredites carried honeybees with them. They both had the ancient knowledge. I think she does. I'd have to go back and look, but I think she does. There's a whole epic with like Eve and the honeybee and the honeycombs and stuff like that is interrelated.
And in the Jewish way of thinking, right, the seed of Abraham, we always think it's his seed. But actually it's a woman who carries the
woman, yeah.
the seeds.
Well, we don't have babies alone.
Well, she's literally the carrier of the seed.
Yes.
Right? So that's why it's like it's of the fathers, but it has to be fathers don't exist without mothers.
Oh no, and I totally agree. That when you hear that's a holdover from Judaism for me. What it means when we say the knowledge of the fathers, it really just means of the ancients of. And that could be male and female, specifically Adam and Eve.
The paradisical location of
exactly.
the to get there.
The doctrines that are meant to bring us back to that condition.
Yes.
And who knew they're in the Book of Mormon?
So why would they use Deseret instead of Deborah?
Now that is a good question. And I don't know 100% other than he's drawing on Hebrew roots, but he's trying to connect something. The actual original teaching goes back to the first Deborah, not just the prophetess Deborah, but Deborah, who was I think she was the wet nurse. And so it says here, the word Deseret as a honeybee or Deborah is also meant to connect us to the land of Bethel, the house of God, and the death of Rebekah's nurse. Okay, so Jacob came to Luz, which was in the land of Canaan. That is Bethel, he and all the people that were with him, and he built there an altar, which was called by the place El Bethel, because God appeared to him when he fled from the face of his brother. But Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried beneath Bethel under an oak. Okay, and an oak tree is one of the trees, the king's tree of Israel. And the name of it was called, now don't even ask me how that one's done. I'd still have to go back and look at that in the Hebrew. Alam Bakut. I'm not even sure what that one means on that one. But Deborah as Rebekah's wet nurse, i.e. the one who fed and nourished Jacob. Here Deseret is equated with the teaching of Deborah as not only the nourishment that feeds the house of Israel, but sits at the root of the oak tree of Israel. She's at the root. She's the source of life, if you will. The symbolic tree of Abraham, in this case in the land of Bethel, the house of God. So it's drawing an image that Deseret, Deborah, is connecting us with this teaching. Now, why they specifically chose to, it's like I kind of look at them and go, well, I'd have to probably go back and take the word apart a little more. But like, for example, like ire antum, I'm sure it has something very similar. I just don't know what that is yet. Some of these are hard just because I don't have the Hebrew, and I'm having to listen very carefully to their pronunciations. They are Hebrew constructs. Sometimes I just look at them and go, I can tell someone's guessing on how to pronounce Hebrew, and somebody's writing it to the best of their ability. And it's good. It's just that there are times where it goes, I would be great if I could know exactly what letter. But I did find out what letter they were using because of the parallelism. So, because the S could be, is it a Samic? Is it a Zayin? Is it a Zadeh or something like that? And it's the same thing for like Zara. Here's another one that you'll find interesting. Ref li'ankum. Ripliancum, large or exceed all. And it came to pass that he came to the waters of Reph-leankum, which by interpretation is large or to exceed all. Wherefore, when they came to these waters, they pitched their tents, and Shez also pitched his tents near unto them. Therefore, on the morrow they did come to battle. Reph-leankum. Here the prophet writer of the Book of Mormon designates two connections to the words large and exceed all. The parent word Resh Pe, Ref, carries a relational meaning to the words Rephaim. Rephaim was a description of a characteristic shared by a group of people. The Rephaim means are described in the Tanakh as giants or mighty men. The brother of Jared was a mighty man. Okay. The description mighty men also should come to sound familiar to the readers of the Book of Mormon, and the brother of Jared being a large and mighty man, and a man highly favored of the Lord, Jared, his brother, Ether 134. Like Coriantumr in, was it Ether, I think it's 2, might be 3, where he's described as a large and mighty man. It's because he's a descendant of the Jaredites. Zarahemla was a intermingling of the Jaredites. How do you know? Look at the word connectors. Large and mighty man was not placed by accident. These people intermingled. Mulekites, why was the original Coriantumr among the Mulekites for 9 moons, gestational period for a child, and why were there always these fights between the king men, between the Nephites, the Mulekites, and the descendants of Zarahemla? Because each of them had a royal line, and each of them had a covenant, and they were all fighting with each other of whose right it was to rule. The Hebrew word for large is gadol, and is found first in Genesis 1:16. And God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. The connection being drawn here in this particular phrase in Ether is an astrotheological based theme of the battle between the sun and the moon. So like, for example, when Coriantumr and Shez go at it, and one cuts the head off the other, not only is that a little battle, it's actually a symbolic battle between the sun and the moon. These are all astrotheological symbols. So like, for example, the brother of Jared had 12 sons. The brother of Jared had 22 sons. Jared had 12. The brother of Jared is heavenly. He's the archetypal Hebraic universe. He has 22 children, three mothers, 7 doubles, and 12 elementals. And then we go, Jared has 12 sons. 4 vied for to be king. Arya became the king. He means lion. So it designates not only the time in which they came down, the era of Leo the lion, but also, notice very similar to Jacob, and Judah was the 4th son. His symbol is the lion. So not only in the book of Athar, Ether, it's a book of formation, a book of creation. The whole book of Ether is more than what we give it credit for. So it's an amazing text. So the idea here being is that the reference to Genesis connects the book of Ether to Genesis as a book of formation and creation. In other words, a lot of these symbols, the numbers that they use, the metals that they talk about, gold things mean like celestial world, brass, those things are the angelic world, silver has another meaning. Things mean things. And you're meant to, it's a lot of symbolism, but you're meant to understand that this whole epic contains layers of information. Ripley, exceed all. Now here's a cool prophecy. I love this one. Also, Ripley means to exceed all. We are also meant to draw the connection between the words exceed all. The words exceed all or exceeding comes from the word meod, which is the first mention in Genesis 15 regarding Abraham and the promised son. And after these things, the word of the Lord came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield, and thy exceeding great reward. And Abram said, Lord God, what wilt thou give me, seeing I go childless, and the steward of my house is this Eleazar of Damascus? Here, this Torah portion then goes on to declare the promised blessings and inheritance of the seed of Abraham. In the same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abraham, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land and the river of Egypt, and unto the great river, the river Euphrates. The Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Kadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, and the who? The Rephaim. Who were the Jaredites? They were the Rephaim. Whose descendants inherited the land of the Jaredites? Abraham's seed. A fulfillment of the prophecy right there. He's drawing one prophecy to another, showing us that Abraham's seed did actually inherit this land. Okay, from who? Those Rephaim, who would be the Jaredites, the large and mighty people.
Do you believe the Jaredites were
Physically taller? Yeah, I think they were physically taller. I do. So here the interpreted words of the Book of Mormon draw connections between the Rephaim, the Jaredites. We also find a fulfillment, the seed of Abraham, who inherit them and their lands. The house of Israel inheriting the Jaredites through Coriantumr and their covenant lands. And it also contains prophetic numbers. Numbers mean things in the Book of Mormon. It's not by accident. So this is the Hebrew archetypal universe. You'll see on the left side there, you will see the numeric values of the numbers. On the right side, you'll see what we call the archetypal Hebraic universe. The 3 mother letters, the 7 double letters, and the 12 simple letters. And each of these have symbols, both in the spiritual and in the physical world. Like, if you look at the names of the sons of the brother of Jared who were trying to be king, each of their names has a meaning. Gilgah means a cycle or a wheel. One of them has, I always have to go back, one of them has to do with Saturn. And then the other one has, of course, Arya meaning Leo, the time of Leo. And there was another one on there. I'm going to have to go through that some other time on that. But let's take a look at just an example of numbers and their meaning. About 476 years. You see that phraseology with numbers in the Book of Mormon? It means things. And Mosiah began to reign in his father's stead, and he began to reign in the 30th year of his age, making in the whole about 476 years from the time that Lehi left Jerusalem. Okay, numbers mean things. That number, 476, appears in one distinct phrase in the book of Proverbs. Blessed, and the book of Psalms as well. Bless the Lord, all his works, Okay? In all places of his dominion, bless the Lord, O my soul. Here's the cool one. In the light of the king's countenance, now Mosiah was a king, and his favor is as the cloud of the latter rain. Latter rain is a prophecy of the future restoration of the house of Israel, in which it would be so glorious they would no longer talk about the Passover of Moses anymore. This would be the restoration of the house of Israel from the four corners of the earth. So it being about 476 is connecting that epic in Mosiah where this is mentioned to this prophecy of the latter rains. So there's a concealed prophecy. And what is it? Mosiah 6-8 is an encrypted prophecy. King Mosiah, King Messiah, sends 16 strong men, mighty men, angelic beings. Okay? Four, that's the doorway, goes into the land of Lehi Nephi, a wordplay on Genesis 2:7, Nefesh Chaya, the living soul. He go down to the land of living souls. Ammon, or Enoch, and it came to pass that on the morrow they started to go up, having with them one Ammon, or Enoch, he being a strong and mighty man, an angelic figure, a translated being, and a descendant of Zarahemla, and he was also their leader. So one story is actually Ammon and Zarahemla. The symbolic story behind it is Enoch. Ammon equal 116, which is basically the blood of grapes, the wine of initiation, the fruit of Adam, the son of man. All these are the numeric values of 166, by the way. Son of man equal Enoch equal the initiate.
The initiate. That being initiated into mysteries or
Yeah.
moving beyond. Wow. This is so awesome.
So these are the prophetic parallels. Alma took 3 of his brethren, their names were Amalek, Amaleki, Helem, and Hem, and they went down to the land of Nephi. A parallel account is found in the second book of Adam and Eve regarding the death of Jared. His name, Yered, meaning to descend or to come down. Before the death of Jared, in this original record, he calls for Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah. Notice it's interesting that Ammon goes down to the people that were the people of King Noah. And here, Jared calls Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah. And he goes down to, in other words, he calls those men to go down to the children of Seth that descended. Here, we have the children of Lehi Nephi, the living souls who went down and couldn't get back. They were the children of King Noah. His father's name was Lemhi, Lamed Mem, who shares the same parent root as Lamech. These things are given as a Jew to tell you, connect this to over here. This is something that went on over here too. So the idea is it's giving you little prophetic keys and connectors so that when you see common names, you're meant to make that connection. It's intentionally meant to be connected.
Can you say that again? Before his death, Jared calls Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah.
Yeah, that's in the original account.
That's the original one. And then those parallel.
Then we'll look at the parallels.
The parallels.
Yeah, so now we'll look at the parallels in the stories. Okay. So the left-hand side is from the account given in the books of Adam and Eve. The right is given in the Book of Mormon. The children of Seth descend from the holy mountain. Book of Mormon. The people of Zenos descend from Zarahemla to obtain the land of Lehi Nephi. Original account, the children of Seth leave instructions of God and their fathers. Zeniff, the people of Zeniff and under his son Noah leave the instructions of God and their fathers. The children of Seth come into bondage to the children of Cain, who had a mark or skin of darkness. The people of Zeniff come into bondage to the Lamanites, who had a mark or skin of darkness. 4 patriarchs remained on the holy mountain: Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah. 4 consisting of Ammon, a mighty one, like Enoch, and 3 others are sent to ascertain the condition of the people of Zeniff. In the original account, the children of Seth could not ascend the mountain again because the stones of the holy mountain were of flaming fire flashing before them. Whereas in Ammon discovers the people of Zeniff, who under Lemhi discover the plates of ether, which contain the story of 16 illuminated or fiery stones, designated designed to take them to the promised land. In one story, they can't ascend. In the other story, they did.
Wow.
One is the precursor to the other. This, in the Book of Mormon, is a fulfillment of the story given in Adam and Eve. In other words, they couldn't ascend. He's telling us how to ascend. And it's King Messiah. It's a play on words.
Oh my gosh.
Enoch is taken and returned to the land of life in the original account. Ammon leads the people of Limhi and Zenith to return to the land of Zarahemla, the seed or the children of life.
Discourse.
So the whole book is a story that, if you know the original story, is now giving you its fulfillment, saying, here the children of Seth who descended couldn't ascend. We, the children of the Seth, or the Lamanites, or the mixed seed, the unilluminated people, the dense people like us, who aren't like the angelic people, can also ascend. And he gives us not only that story about their ascension back, when he sends it back, and there's actually a very distinct key teaching in that epic, which I won't go into here because we don't have time, but there's a distinct key teaching of how they did it. And then later, in the whole epic of Ammon and Lamoni, it's the same parallel again, except he's giving us even more instruction of how they went from an unilluminated state back into the condition of Adam before the fall.
So the whole concept, really, like Abraham gave us the idea of ascension, going up through the levels.
Yeah.
And then, but that's really the mountain, isn't
Yeah.
it? And when you get up onto the mountain where you can behold the face of God, it's these, and then the 144 or the illuminated beings or the seraphs, they're the ones that can come down and try and assist others.
Yeah, 144,000, literally. The book of Revelation is a sealed book, right?
Yeah.
Same science applies. So 144,000 is a numeric value, but the numeric value means those who have ascended.
There you go. Wow.
Yes, ma'am.
The law of opposition.
Was that?
The law of opposition.
Yes, ma'am.
But, I mean, it's like in the big picture,
Mm-hmm.
it fits all this.
Yeah, there's opposition in all things. One of the laws of Enoch. There are opposites in all things.
You know, and it's like, and I've learned about, I don't want to get too off, but the directions, north, south, east, west.
That's actually my next presentation, actually. So I'll give you a brief.
The sun, that's,
So like when,
sun and sun come.
yeah,
And like the Egyptians would bury facing west.
yeah. So like, for example, when Hagoth builds his vessels at the land bountiful, and there's a sea north, a sea south, a sea east, and sea west, and he sets sail into the sea west, those directions mean things. They're actually giving you instructions on the how to ascend.
Okay, is the masculine and feminine connected to that?
Oh, but,
North, south?
well, yeah, because, west is Yesod, which means the male and female. It's the balancing of the male and female. That's the first thing that has to be done. You have to balance the male and female. There's no way around it. Even though I'm a bachelor now, I will tell you that still there's no way around balancing the male and female. But then, of course, you follow that straight and narrow path up the tree of life, which you balance both the male and the female. So you'll balance glory, male, to long-suffering, female. You'll balance justice and judgment, male, to mercy, female. The combining of the two, once it's balanced, creates the condition we call Tiferet, beauty. It's also called the secret of Messiah. It's the balancing of the male and female.
Secret, right?
Secret of Messiah. It's called the Tiferet, secret of Messiah, the heart. It's the heart of the tree. It's the balancing of the male and the female. That's the condition of when it says those who came up under this order of priesthood could turn back armies, navies, mountains, because they had come up to that condition of balance in their life.
It's going to make a little funny one, but you guys, we went down to the Tree of Life petroglyph, and at the end of it is the tree, and she has out little hands and feet. It looks very feminine. Next to her is a masculine holding his hands up, and above it there's a heart, And I'm like, that does not look ancient. Looks like somebody just must have scratched it, right? But when I look close, it was literally pecked in. So that there's something about that heart, or the two coming together to be one. It's a very ancient symbol, but we, see it as Valentine cards, Anyway, concept, that's a very beautiful concept.
So again, land of Lehi Nephi, the land of living souls. So in other words, and who's the living soul? The land of living souls is Adam. So the land of living souls are the children, it's us. That's the children of Adam and Eve. But we want to be the children of Adam and Eve and in their condition before the fall. And that's what these stories are about. So we see that just as like there's a code word for like Lehi and Nephi, Lehi Nephi. Lehi itself means the jawbone of an ass. It literally does. But the poetic plays on words are there. They're intentional. You'll see the Ammon-Enoch connection, that we discussed. And again, it says, another Ammon, and in this case, let me go back one. So in this case, like for example, so that, we talked about Ammon being a type and shadow of Enoch, and we also talked about the Ammon-Enoch connection in Alma 17 with Ammon and his three brothers going down. And again, those four people, just like four went down before, four go down again. So four go down, and Ammon and his brothers, the sons of Mosiah, in the book of Alma, in the book of Mosiah, it's Ammon and three others go down to the Nephi Lehi.
In the ark, right?
Yeah.
In the four sons.
And the four is the four sons, and the four is the idea of a doorway, not the door, not the lintel around the door itself. Yeah, the actual slat gate itself. Yeah. Here's another one I did through this here at the end. Then we're just about done here. We're like 2 slides away. 600 years. Okay. Now it came to pass the 91st year had passed away, and it was 600 years from the time that Lehi left Jerusalem. And it was in the year that Lechonias was the chief judge and the governor of the land. But Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died. The word means the word for nurse. Okay. And she was buried beneath Bethel under an oak, and the name of it was called, Anyway, 600 Menechet, equal Rebekah's nurse, Deborah. Deborah, Deseret. So what's interesting is that you will see numeric values of meaning. Like, for example, you ever wonder why 4th Nephi has so many numbers? Ever tried looking up the value of the numbers in the Torah, in the prophets, and also in the books? And I guarantee you'll get 4 different messages. You will get 4 different accounts. One will be a creation account. One will be an instructional account of how they did Zion. One will be a prophetic account of the future, of what will come to pass for us. And then there's a whole other account regarding a city that ascends. All based on its numbers. Sorry. So all these numbers give us hidden meanings. But you can't go too far, and you have to keep it. You need to be able to not go overboard with it, because the idea, some people are like, oh, this number means that number, like, usually it's combined with a key phrase. And when you see numeric patterns, like 4th Nephi has, they'll do something like, and in the 41st year, and the 42nd year, and then they skip a few years, and they do the same thing again. Why specifically are they mentioning those years? Because those years have specific meanings, and they're tied to specific scriptures. But and you're meant to approach it that way. So, that was the presentation.
Q&A.
Yes, ma'am.
I have one question for you. How do you see our current prophet as his insights and his challenges?
Oh, I take my hat off to the man. I mean, I'm just like, running an organization of how many millions of people? I mean, it's one of those things that, I always have a lot of people that will ask me, both for bad or good, what I think about the church leaders. And I'm like, I can't even begin to sit in their shoes. I mean, I can barely tie my own shoes, much less, deal with and to govern my own kids, much less, what is it, 16 million people now? Everybody has their place. Everybody has their calling, and God's going to use them. It's like there's a teaching in Israel which says, No man can have anything unless God gives it to him. So if President Nelson is in that position, he wouldn't be there if God didn't want him there. For both whatever, I think, for good, for the church, and perhaps, and when I say bad, I don't mean bad, I mean in the sense of like, for judgment upon those who won't follow the gospel of Jesus Christ. You know, as for him personally, I like his suits. I like his suits. I think, and I like him. I like some of the things he says. And I just, you know, it's one of those things that when I look at the prophet and the brethren, I just kind of step away and just say, you know, because I get so many people that I've had people that want me to try to like criticize them. And I've had people say, well, why don't they teach this? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. And I'm not, and just because they don't, I mean, how would I teach somebody, say in Africa or South America, a Sunday school lesson regarding this? I mean, 15 million people of such varying diverse levels. What could you do? So I have to take my hat off to them.
To open up the challenge to gather Israel.
Yeah, that's something that God's going to have to do through them. I'll just be content with enjoying the Book of Mormon.
But at least he's introduced it in a way we can relate.
Yeah.
Start to apply.
And so that's the thing, is it's like, you know, but yeah, it is interesting. Over the years, I've had a lot of people on both sides of the either want me to like, some people just want me to be so critical of everything. And I'm going, well, guys, why? We're all human. I mean, I don't know their day-to-day activities. I don't know what they live like. I mean, I'm assuming just like me, he puts his pants on like one at a time, and he has a normal life, and then he also, he has his calling, and that's something between him and God. We have to let God reveal himself and work whatever means and what direction he's taking the church in, or allowing it to go, or whatever that means. I mean, that's kind of how I sit with the whole thing. I have to kind of sit back and trust God, because especially look at what's on last year. It's been some trying times, and we have to just kind of say, well, I can't sit in judgment on the man because I don't know him, but I look at some of his teachings and I go, pretty amazing. Okay, well, so where should I start? So we'll start over here and we'll work our way. Okay.
Well, just real quick, back to Book of Mormon.
Uh-huh.
They prepare for wars for 4 years.
Yes.
It's pretty consistent.
Yeah. So 4 is a doorway, and so when you see warfare going on, also consider spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
So and plus there's probably a few other things too, but the idea that the symbols are there intentionally and they're meant to say, hey, meditate on this, pray about this. There's more going on here. So yes, ma'am?
Yeah,
And then
just real quick, I was reading in Alma yesterday about, just talking to Hillman, Alma the theater, and telling Hillman, you're in charge of records now, keep track of them, be obedient, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking about how, with the Leahona, Leahona tone. Is when you talked about Leahona earlier, reminded me of something I read yesterday, I never really noticed before, how Nephi, and they had the compass, or the Leahona, it didn't work, like it only worked according to their faith.
Yeah.
But then, at some point, they stopped being faithful, and they wandered in the wilderness, and they, there's and so forth. And I was thinking, like, here, how can Nephi, who's, this big, amazing person we think of, and his father, Lehi, who's the prophet, and to just like sit, and it's like he was saying they're being slothful and not being obedient. And I was like, is that really what happened? Is he really saying is that symbolic of something? Like,
I think it's both. I think they probably did really wander in the wilderness, and I think also because they're as they the idea of the Leahona is connected to a teaching called the wisdom's paths, or paths of wisdom, and as you adhere to them, you're led in the more fertile parts of the wilderness. If you don't adhere to wisdom's paths, then you get stalled or lost in the wilderness.
I think it's more like a battle, like Lehi and Nephi were trying to be faithful and obedient, but like Laman and Lemuel and other people in the group.
Well, it's your battle. It's my battle.
Was all of them being faithful, or
Well,
it didn't work
I personalize it down to individuals. So I have a Nephi and a Lehi, a Nefesh. My spirit is Lachai. And I also have an ego and a natural man, Laman and Lemuel.
Okay,
So you can go, you can follow that and look at yourself as I have a Nephi and Lehi in me that wants to be submissive and wants to follow God, and then I have the natural man, you know, and it also has other meanings too. But I think it really did happen. But then, what does the story symbolize? Why, like for example, they wandered in the wilderness. Why did Israel wander in the wilderness? How are those things related? Because they are interconnected. The two accounts are intertwined. So one is connected to the other. So why did the children of Israel wander? Because they loved to pass the wilderness. Why did Lehi and Nephi wander in the wilderness? Because either they stopped hearkening, or they got tired, or along the way, or whatnot. And it shows the way through. That first Nephi is really the journey of the soul. Our soul.
And eventually they made it. I mean, they were slothful, they wanted
Yeah.
to do whatever, but eventually they
made it to bountiful.
They had enough belief.
Yeah.
They had enough faith.
Exactly.
I can make this, no matter how long it takes me, whatever the exact.
And Nephi gets his bow, which is a very ancient teaching called the bow of hope, and his bow breaks. He makes another bow, and he obtains food, and all that is a very ancient teaching regarding the bow of hope. It's how he connected to heaven. It's the straight path. And once he does that, he goes back, takes the food back to his father, and what happens? He goes to the Lord, repents, and the Lihono begins to work again, and they're able to go in a direct course in the wilderness. So that kind of gives you an overview of that. So is that you? Yes, ma'am.
My question is, you go back to the past, you go back to the Book of Mormon, but what about our day? When you're doing all this, do you see names, do you see patterns today that you are connecting?
Oh, I think that you're going to see prophetically in the Book of Mormon, yes. I think you're going to see, whether his actual name is Joseph or not, I think you're going to see a Messiah ben Yosef. It's like, for example, a lot of times people, when they read, I think it's 2 Nephi 2, I think it is, about the chosen seer. And it says that Moses will have a spokesman and the chosen seer will have a spokesman. And we traditionally apply that, which was a literal case of like Aaron to Moses, and maybe Sidney Rigdon or Oliver Cowdery to Joseph Smith. But it actually has a deeper meaning. So like, for example, the word actual for spokesman is dabar, word. Who was the word of Moses? The word in Hebrew, a word fulfills, it brings into manifestation into the world. So who fulfilled Moses' teachings? Who was Moses' real spokesman besides Aaron? It's Christ. Joseph Smith, okay, even though he had an Aaron as well, he has a spokesman that will come many years later to complete what was started. Just like Moses started, Messiah completed, Joseph started, another choice seer will complete. One fulfills the other. And usually they're in preparation for like a great, marvelous prophetic work. Like Christ did the atonement, the next time will be a bringing forth of a Zion. So that's what I see in the Book of Mormon. But despite that, the whole Book of Mormon should also apply to us personally. In other words, how do I transform? How do I transform my heart? How do I become a living soul like Adam before the fall? And how do you? And how do we do that? And that is all in the Book of Mormon. Oh, let me go this way and then I'll come back around. Was there anybody over here that had a question? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all these things that you have just told us today I want to know where to search the scriptures, and they are layered. And the things that you just taught me today, and the parallels between the Ammon and was it Enoch or whoever?
Yeah.
Okay, all these parallels I would never have known, and yet they are very enriching, and it brings more meaning to the Book of Mormon to me. All these things they're very good and helpful to know. But I would never have known them had I not been here today. I probably would go my whole life without knowing that. And yet it's very beneficial for me to know that. So how do people know these things? How?
Well, you have got to learn the Jewish
What's
language.
your site, so people could go? 'Cause
Oh, you could. Well, you're welcome to go to my site. I put everything for free.
I don't know how to articulate this. People are not going to pick this up on their own, as
No.
they don't know Hebrew stuff. They're
Well-
just not going to pick it up on their own. Is it not worth knowing? I guess maybe God led me here to be with you today, so that would be.
You know,
Yeah. So I'm thinking,
sealed books are interesting because it confuses a lot of people. If God wants to save us, why is He concealing knowledge? It's just like the temple. It's not that He's trying to hide the path. It's just that the knowledge is so holy, so sacred, that He doesn't want it to get into the wrong hands. He wants this sacred knowledge in the right hands. So, we don't know what we don't know. I look at the scriptures and think, what in the world am I missing? Because I look at them sometime and go, I know there's something there, but I can't always dig it out. So I go and I pray about it, I meditate about it, and I let God take His own sweet time until maybe I'm ready, or maybe the time is right. And do I think for a second I see all of it? Oh, no. Not in a bazillion years. I think it's like God gives us snapshots for things that we need. And here's the thing. We are in some very precarious times. Sorry, I'm so quiet. We are in some very challenging times. And if I can share with you these things that will open up the Book of Mormon to you, then you can take them and you can use them to grow, to learn, to bless others, and to help them to see more. Because we have a lot of enemies. A lot of people want to rip apart the Book of Mormon. And some of them, I won't mention there, they've even invited me on their show and I start laughing, because I'm just like, no. And because they just want to fight. But the reality is, most of the time, people get disgruntled and angry, and then they start looking for things intellectually to support their emotional decision. In reality, we can sit down all day long, and I can show you parallelism after parallelism, truth after truth in the Book of Mormon. But at the end of the day, it comes down to the intent of our hearts. Your intent, my intent, is really to become one with Christ and to follow Him. That's what these teachings are meant to do. They're meant to change us from the inside out. They're meant to unleash the power of God, to restore the gifts of the Spirit. I don't know if you've noticed lately, but our condition in this country is just not good. We do not have the Spirit of God. We do not have the gifts of the Spirit like we read about in the Scriptures. I'm not saying the individuals don't, but I'm just saying as a whole, we're far from a Zion. But, anciently in Israel, it was taught that Enoch took much of his hidden knowledge and put them upon gold plates. That's one of our traditions. And that they were passed down to Abraham. We don't know where they went. Have you ever thought that maybe the plates that were given to Nephi contained these teachings of Enoch for a Zion, for us to come forth? Just waiting to come forth? And it doesn't start, it's not, look, the prophet of the church can only do so much. He can't govern our personal lives. He's one person. That's like saying, Moses, fix it all for us. Or Moses, you go talk to God and tell us what to do. That's abusive to him and irresponsible on our part. We should be individually, it's like Moses said, would to God all the Lord's people were prophets. So in a sense, even though there's order, the church has order, that's not the order I'm talking about. The church has order. They have their officers. They have to conduct business. They have to take care of people. But we as the people have a responsibility. We have to transform from within. They can't do very much unless we, as individuals first, connect into heaven. And those teachings in the Book of Mormon, and by the way, there's quite a few more, we just scratched the surface. God not only put these hidden scriptures in there, He also encoded the hidden disciplines that He gave to Enoch and the prophets in Israel of how they were transformed. They're in there. You're just reading right over them. And the hard part about it is, unfortunately, we don't have the time to go into a lot of them now. But I will tell you, from Alma 63 all the way through 3 Nephi, it's a transformer. It's more than meets the eye. You know?
3 Nephi where?
All the way to the end. Yeah. In fact, even the Book of Ether has, when they're building their barges and they're putting a hole in the top and in the bottom, it's not quite what you think.
Oh, give us a hint. We don't know what that hole was about.
He did. He came and gave his whole speech on the whole Jaredites.
Yeah. Well, the hole. Do you remember the hole?
The hole in the top? Okay, so that they put a hole in the top and a hole in the bottom. Find where that phrase occurs in the Torah. It occurs once.
Hole in the top and hole in the bottom?
And what it has reference to. It has reference to the high priest's vestments.
The what?
The high priest's vestments.
Vestment?
Means their jalabia and the ephod and all that. There's a hole in the top and a hole in the bottom. And it has to do with a very ancient teaching of restoring the Spirit of God to the people. When God says, my spirit shall not always strive with man. Strive doesn't mean, it's bad English translation. My spirit shall not always invigorate man or enliven you. Therefore, call upon my name, because in other words, it's saying, in this fallen state, we're going to entropy, we're going to chaos, we're dying. Therefore, call upon his name, which is a real thing in ancient Israel. By praying and meditating and drawing near to him, we are transformed. We receive that life-giving spirit. And all of those symbols in the Book of Mormon, the stones being molten out of rock, interpreter stones, all of these things, Moses coming up, pillars of fire coming down, are all part of the message. We just have to unlock it. And we have to take it one thing at a time. And the very first thing that he says, and it seems to be over and over again, call upon my name. Which means in Hebrew, not just, Lord, bless me with this, I want a cookie, I want that, I want a car, I want this. Calling upon the name is literally desiring to be in a condition of oneness with God. Names are conditions of being. So in other words, when I call upon the Father in the name of Christ, I'm going to call upon the Father in the sense of my desires, my words, my desires are what Christ would pray. That's why we need the Holy Ghost, because it helps us to know the words to pray. And what do we really pray? Less words, more desire. And that's the whole thing. So I say that, and we think, oh, well, that's just spiritual, that's just out there somewhere. But it's a real spiritual physics, if you will. Thought, words, deeds create. We are beings of spirit. It's like when Laman and Lemuel asked, they asked Nephi, do the things which our father saw, are they things which are spiritual, or are they pertaining to things which are temporal? Translation. Did Dad just see these things in his head, or is this real? That's really what it says. And they're like, Nephi's like, both. He saw them in his head, thought, and they're real too. So all spiritual creation, everything in spirit begins with thought and spirit. Then it manifests into the world. And that's what we as Latter-day Saints have to do. We have to come to oneness with Christ's thoughts, His Sermon on the Mount, His teachings. We want that to be us. What He describes in the Beatitudes, if you will. I don't like that name, but the things that He describes there, the desires, that's what we want to be. We want to be beings of justice and mercy. We want to be beings of love and light. We want to be beings of, long-suffering and knowledge, wisdom, understanding. I mean, if you look at the last chapter of the Book of Mormon, it is a literal summary and outline of the entire doctrines of everything in the Book of Mormon given in one chapter. And it's a progression, the gifts of the Spirit are progression up the tree of life and back down it. So, in that last chapter, Moroni is giving you a summary of all the teachings in the Book of Mormon, what they were meant to point to, which is a ascending and descending of the tree of life. So, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
8 years in the wilderness,
Mm-hmm.
and then they go into the water.
And then they go into what?
Into the water.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that like
So the,
the 8 years in preparation for baptism?
oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. I hadn't thought about that one. I mean, I might have to use that next time. No, well, the number 8, it means is a complete preparation. It also means the formation of a covenant house. In other words, when a house is set in order, it's like there were 8 barges, and there were 16 stones, 2 stones in each barge. Those are the symbol of a covenant house. There were 8, were there really 8 souls in Noah's Ark? Or is 8 the sign of, it's a covenant house in Noah's Ark. 8 is the idea of a covenant house. So it's something that's been brought to a state of completion. So maybe that does have to do with 8 years old in baptism. I mean, it makes sense to me. One type and shadow of the other. Yes, ma'am. Mormon Yeshiva, YESHIVA.blogspot.com. Yes, ma'am.
Did you say Hagar, his name has that a symbolic meaning?
It means meditations. It's found in, you'll see the same word, Haga, meaning, because Haga is meditate, and Hagot is the feminine possessive plural of meditations, and it appears in Psalms 49:3 for meditations. And his actual name means meditations. Notice that he's the shipbuilder. Meditations build the ship. And then they took off to the land northward. How many thousands of souls? Much more going on there.
And what were the 2 other parts? You said Hagot, and something else.
Haga is the singular version of meditate.
Hagot.
Yeah. Hagoth, as we would say it. Meditations.
And what was the female? You know.
Oh, the OT is just the female possessive plural.
OT. Okay.
Or female plural. Oh, so north is a place of power. Okay, and like if you're going into the land northward, notice where all the people who were taken by the hand of God went to the land northward, to the place of power. So even those land, how everybody wants to fight over, did it occur in, did the Book of Mormon occur in America, or is it Mesoamerica, or where did it occur? And I go, well, while I'm inclined to believe it's North America, on another level of interpretation, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do, it's the Book of Mormon's way of describing the tree of life. One tradition will describe the tree of life as its fruits and its emanations as fruits, gifts. But there's another description for Mizrahi and Sephardi Jews, depths, as in seas, oceans, waters. So you have a sea east, a sea west, a sea north, and a sea south. And where are you? When they set sail, where did Nephi and Hagot set sail from? A land called Bountiful. And Bountiful is a symbol for something. So next time we go to the Tree of Life, we'll have to do that.
Cool.
Can
I ask one more? I could ask you. Just because Hagot it has this female plural, and Elohim also has a female plural, doesn't it?
Well, Im is plural, but Ot is usually the feminine plural. It doesn't. You have to be careful in Hebrew not to assign gender to meaning male and female. A lot of times it has to do with, most of the time, it's just functionality, or it's grammar, or it's part of its grammar.
Okay, but a lot of times, like Israel, you think of the sons of El,
Yeah.
I mean, sons of God.
Yes.
Right? But when you were talking about earlier, you usually think that union of the masculine and feminine coming together, that Elohim is the highest.
Yeah, it means like governing dominion, authority, male, female, created he, them, So it has masculine and feminine. So it gets hard because, a lot of people, they make a lot of theological jumps
Yeah.
to when I say like the Ruach Elohim is feminine. Does that mean it's a woman? No. It means it's functionality. The Spirit is a nurturer. It gives life to children like a mother gives life to children. Okay, does that mean the actual Holy Ghost is an actual woman herself? Singular? No. But some people want to make it that way. But it's everything in Hebrew is primarily functional. There are concrete meanings, but we're meant to look at the function rather than not just the form. So function and form play a huge role. So in other words, you don't want to demean the feminine, you just want to see it in its proper function. It's like, for example, El Shaddai. It means the mighty breast, like a woman's breast. It's like, because it nourishes a child. So those things, when you look at its functionality of like a mother that nourishes and cares for and raises and comforts, that's why its functionality is feminine.
But there really is a different functionality, right? So when in modern times they're saying that they are the chest feeder or a birthing person, right? Just making, these are the new...
Oh, those are new terms? Oh, I can't keep up with all the craziness.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. They so diminish that functionality.
Yeah, well, they're destroying both masculine and feminine.
But I think maybe the ancient, like as you got rid of all the female aspects and just put all that functionality into a masculine form.
Okay.
That we've really lost, that there really is power in the male and female, different functionality.
You bet. I think that is what our goal is to be restored to.
That's what I
is masculine and feminine in their proper relationship, meaning balanced, one, and each functioning the way it was meant to.
In that complement.
Exactly. It's not to say, all of us men produce estrogen, just like women can produce testosterone too. We both have it in us. Right. Okay, I just have more of one, depending on the time of the year, and you have more of the other. And so the idea being, we're functional beings. And so, I have both masculine and feminine in me. I've got to balance that. You have both masculine and feminine in you.
You can't bear a child.
I can't bear a child. But balancing that is the process, not just in other words, I'm not trying to be this androgynous being.
Right.
It's the idea of, it's like, for example, I find, in other words, men are more, generally speaking, are probably more predisposed to strength, judgment, glory, rational thinking, understanding. Okay, now that's a generality. That's not meant for everybody. And women are more apt toward the idea of wisdom. Now, wisdom in Hebrew does not mean what it means in English. So wisdom in Hebrew is not the proper application of thought. That's understanding. Wisdom in Hebrew is pure knowledge, that intuition kind of thing, that
God-given,
that pure intelligence. And then the guy takes the intelligence and organizes it. In Hebrew, it's just a bit opposite.
Kind of natural law is there.
Yeah.
Knowledge is trying to figure out how does that natural law work.
How do I organize it to make it work?
Or to understand.
Yeah, that's why in the creation epic, when the Spirit of God moves upon the waters, there's all that feminine symbolism there, and then the idea being that for the Sophia, the Ruach, it moves upon it's that creative element. It's feminine in its functionality, but there's the masculine present too. Obviously it's not one without the other. Yeah, I can't bear a child, but technically speaking, a woman can't get pregnant without a guy.
But there can be 7 women with one guy, right? Like there's
Oh, I'm not going there.
But I just mean that the actual creation of the child, right? Her matter, her things that it takes, the amount of energy on the female side way exceeds. And even to after bearing it in the milk and the breastfeeding and all of those things, it wouldn't survive.
Yeah, right? That's what I say. Tell me that that's not important. Anybody that's had a child and know, even a guy looks like goes, I don't have the equipment to feed that thing. I just don't. And I'm the dad. That's my function.
Right, and to make sure that she's safe and it's protected and there's food.
You bet.
Because it won't work without food.
Yeah, and then what happens is the adversary goes to great degree to flip it upside down.
Yep.
He tries to make women men, men women. They cause enmity between the sexes because then we think, think about it, I have to be, it's like, it becomes this tension and they take the natural tension, which is meant to spark life and fire, and they turn it into a form of enmity where it's like a battle for control. And what happens is that it becomes destructive. Why do we think we see so many divorces?
Oh, it's absolutely upside down.
Yeah.
At this point, and that's why I think it has to be the balance coming in, but there has to be an awakening on the female side of things because it has been this other perspective, a masculine perspective through teachers, theologians, blah, 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 blah.
In the natural world, think about it. God's giving you a pattern. In the natural world, after the fall, this is the world we live in. This is his pattern for success. The head of the woman is the man. The head of the man is Messiah. The head of Messiah is God. Natural world. That's how it works. It will not work in the natural fallen world any other way. But there's another world. There's another world. The spirit world, spiritual aspect. Now that can only be done by conscious choice. That's where we get into the things of heaven, where masculine is transformed and brought into balance, feminine is transformed and brought into balance, and instead of being at odds in a fallen condition, they now become balanced in one. We're not in that world.
No.
But we can be,
Right.
or a couple could be. But the question is, how do we get from point A to point B?
And you really can't do it through Catholicism or Christianity
Or any isms.
isms. They do not work.
Yeah, isms don't work. Isms preserved various elements of truth, but the isms can't change you personally. That has to come directly from you and God.
Yeah.
God is the only transforming agent. That's why in the scriptures, if you'll notice repentance, how like Alma, he's laying out unconscious on the floor for 3 days, and he repents. Did I miss something? 3 days? Can I repent like that? Can I go unconscious and just repent? But in a sense, that really is true repentance. Because what he did is he, in that day, reconnected to the tree of life. He reconnected to the tree of life. And that we call it tikkun, or rectification, repentance, if you will, which is, it's a different word, but the same, they're connected. Happens like that. In other words, think about it. Nephi, 3 Nephi 11, that happened in a day. Alma, 3 Nephi 11, happened in a day. It didn't come over a lifetime. It was one day. Alma the Younger, one day. The Lamanites that came to kill Nephi and Lehi, they had murder in their hearts. I don't know about you guys, unless you're plotting somebody's murder, I don't know. Unless you guys are, but unless you are, I don't think you're like that. That happened in a day. Why? What's the difference? We have the ism, we have the forms. We need the power of godliness manifest. So, anyway, thanks for having me today.